Find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
Located on the edges of your radio static, you've stumbled upon The Lost Signal, your podcast destination for tales of horror and the macabre, brought to life with voice acting and sound effects. New episodes are released every 2 weeks on Monday on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever else you get your podcasts. Join us, won't you?
Hey, Twisted Listeners, I'm Cindy.
And I'm Diva.
And this is Twisted Listers, a podcast about murder
and lists.
And we're brought to you by the Podmoth Podcasting Network. Check out all the other shows on the network. They're amazing and we love them. And I'm sick. I'm so sick.
Cindy's very sick. I was just sick this week with COVID. It's great.
I have to take a COVID test because I was sick 2 weeks ago with something horrible that wasn't COVID. So now I'm like, is this COVID? Did it get me?
Rotating illnesses. Yeah.
It's so fun. So after we record, I'm going to take a nap and then take a test. It's going to be great.
We were just discussing sore throats in depth. Different symptoms.
Really fun.
Exciting combo. Yeah.
Also, I want to share my story that I shared with Diva with the rest of you. This is
it's a good one.
Horrific. So I actually felt pretty fine yesterday. It was kind of in the afternoon. I started to feel shitty. So in the morning, I took my kid out for breakfast because Rory was working. So sometimes we'll like go on little dates with Ollie, like if it's just one of us with him or whatever.
Yeah.
So we go to this diner and it wasn't my first choice, but it was the only one open because I get up at insanely early times. So it was like 7:30. And the other two diners that we typically go to weren't open until 8 and my kid didn't want to wait. So we go to this diner and we sit down, we order food, and I've taken like 4 or 5 bites.
What was it?
Food.
What were you eating?
I was just eating eggs and hash browns and toast. And he was having eggs and pancakes. It was super whatever. And I was having coffee. And I picked my coffee up and I put it to my mouth. And as I do that, I see something like fall through the air. And I look down on my plate and there's a cockroach.
It's so bad.
A cockroach fell from the ceiling. It's insane.
That's so bad.
It's insane. I will not say where it was because I do like this diner. And like also I've worked in food service for like ever. And I can tell you that it doesn't actually say anything about the cleanliness of the restaurant. We live surrounded by bugs. It's not like anything.
Yeah, and LA is a ratty, roachy place. They're just everywhere.
It really is. Like I one time served a salad to somebody and I know for a fact I worked in this restaurant. It was like a group of like 6 of us in the whole restaurant. It was a tiny operation and they washed the salad like really fucking well. And I served it to somebody and it had a baby grasshopper in it, like a live one.
Oh
it was
no.
Really super cute. And she kept coming back. Had it been a roach, I don't know that I'd have ever seen her again, but it was just...
That's true. That is a gnarlier bug. And it does imply uncleanliness more.
It does, which is weird because they're just bugs and they can get in tiny little cracks and it doesn't matter how clean the place is. But anyway, that's my story. Just so you guys know.
How big was it? Like, what's the scale?
Well, that's the thing that concerned me is because if I see a large cockroach somewhere, I'm not worried. If I see a baby cockroach, that means there's baby cockroaches. And it was on the smaller side. It was like maybe a centimeter.
Because I get ones that are like Jurassic size in my house, and like
they just walk in the front door. Yeah, those ones they just walk in the front door. They're not a sign of infestation.
Right.
Why do I know this? Anyway.
Also, my little cat, who's like the snuggliest, sweetest, angelic cat of the two, she like likes to literally rip their heads off. Like
I love that.
She'll eat them alive.
That's amazing. That's great. I hope it hurts. I hate them. which is funny because Rory and Ollie's last name is Roach.
Roach, yeah.
So also, please don't look up my family.
You should delete that. Last name is Boop.
Yeah, okay. I'll put a boop over it.
Okay, all right.
People will figure it out from context clues anyway. But anyway, all right. So this week
what are we doing?
Doing Murders of the Midwest. Yeah, I did pick.
This feels oddly Christmassy. Maybe because it's a cold place.
Yeah. I don't know what led me to do this, but I kind of like doing murders from around areas of the US, so I might start doing this more.
Oregon was good too when we did like we did like Pacific Northwest more broadly. Yeah.
That there's a lot of murderers up there, but this was a really broad category, which I like, but was really fun. And yeah, anyway, but I chose, so you're gonna go first. Also, sorry, I'm sitting in my kid's bed, so I'm showing Diva some of his stuffed animals while I talk.
It's very cute.
This is baby Sully.
Oh yeah, from Monsters Inc.
Yeah, isn't he cute?
It's really
but
cute.
It's him as like a baby, which I didn't even know there was a movie with that. But anyway, I don't know. Maybe there's not. Maybe they just made it to make more money off the franchise.
Yeah, I know they went to college, but I don't remember them being babies. Okay.
Yeah, me neither. Maybe there's like a short. You know how they do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. So.
All right. So my first Midwestian case is like a kind of insanely, in my opinion, kind of legendary, iconic case, but it's not as like 8 pages, excuse me, not as 8 pages long as I expected it to be.
Okay.
So at the end, we can break for like a little theorizing.
Ooh, nice. Okay.
And discussion, I think.
I do love that.
This is the case of Lyric Cook-Morrisey and Elisabeth Collins.
I don't know this one.
No, you do.
Okay. I might once you start talking. I don't know it by name, which I think is
the reason you know it is because of Delphi. So
I do know this one. Thank you. Okay, yeah.
It's always discussed in conjunction with Delphi, for very obvious reasons, because it's thought to be connected to it.
I wonder if they must be looking into it. Anyway, okay, we'll get there.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry.
So we can talk about Delphi as well. So obviously that's a reason to talk about this, but it's its own tragic case in its own right and super fucking similar. Okay. So this happened in 2012, 10 years ago in Evansdale, Iowa. It is like, I think 300 miles from Delphi. So it's like a long drive. It's not exactly adjacent, but you could certainly make the trip.
It's like a 4 or 5 hour drive, probably.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit less. Yeah.
Yeah. So Elisabeth Collins is 8 and her cousin Lyric Cook-Morrisey is 10. Also, it's a very cute name, Lyric.
It is. I like it.
So the two cousins are just like BFFs. Elisabeth is described as super happy. She loved animals and nature. They're just into, little girl stuff like gymnastics, ballet. Elisabeth loved playing hockey, for example. They were both really bubbly and outgoing, really loved by their families. And Lyric would often stay at Elisabeth's house. And like I said, they were super, super close. And Lyric was being raised by her grandmother, primarily their grandmother, as her parents were dealing with drug addiction.
So this is very similar already. Yeah. There's like a lot of similarities.
Yeah, and I'll circle back to the Lyric's family's issues a little bit later, because unfortunately it does kind of a little bit play into this. Okay. Potentially, I should say. But people draw attention to that. So anyway, so they're just at their grandmother's house on July 13th, 2012. Lyric and Elisabeth were dropped off at, I believe, by Elisabeth's mom, if I'm not mistaken, but they're dropped off at their grandma's house for the day, and it's a beautiful summer day, and the two girls leave from grandma's house on their bikes to go biking through town. It could not be more like Midwestern idyllic, like cute, right?
Yeah, I'm like seeing like one of those like old like 50s style movie montages where that's like the like little blonde haired kids like riding their bikes and it's sunny,
or like in It and Stranger Things, like the 80s kids riding their bikes, like
that may be more appropriate to this one, unfortunately.
Yeah. So around noon, a couple witnesses see them in downtown Evansdale riding their bikes. So we know they spent X amount of time biking, and then by a certain point they are in town. And after this sighting, the girls essentially disappear. And they do not come home. Yeah, it's everyone's worst nightmare scenario. And alarms are raised by the girls' grandmother. Obviously, they're not, where the fuck are the girls?
Right.
So later on that day, so a huge search ensues pretty much instantaneously, and their bikes are found along a bike trail that's adjacent to Myers Lake, which is just over a mile away from their grandmother's house.
Okay.
So again, I'm just going to repeat for like dramatic effect. Their bikes are found alongside a trail.
Right.
So right away, that paints kind of a horrific scene, right? Of like an abduction. Yeah.
Yeah. That's never good. That's never like a good, it's not like, oh, good, we found their bikes. It's like, fuck, we found their bikes along a fucking trail.
Yeah, it's terrifying. And then just about 20 feet away from the bikes, investigators and searchers find Elisabeth's purse and phone, and the purse had just been thrown over a fence.
Oh, wow. So it's definitely not, I mean, there's no robbery component. They didn't take her phone. They didn't take her purse. They just took her stuff to like get it away from her.
Yeah. And so she couldn't call for help.
Right.
Potentially. So a massive search ensues. All the FBI, every BI is there. The lake is searched and dragged. There's cadaver dogs. They look in garbage trucks. It's a horrific detail.
Yeah.
They're searching everywhere, and nothing. No more evidence is found after that purse and phone and bike moment.
It's really always terrifying and like so sad when it's like there's cadaver dogs and they're looking in dumpsters. It's like, okay, they officially are just like these girls are dead. There's like they're not even thinking like, oh, they were taken. They're like, no, they're
they have
dead.
they have to search alive and for them alive or dead. But
no, totally. It's just always I can't imagine how hard that is for the family,
Yeah, no, of course. Looking in the trash for your
child. Yeah. God damn.
So tons and tons and tons of people are interviewed. A $15,000 reward is initially posted. I'm sure it's a lot more now. I should check. People volunteer. There's, tons and tons of searches repeatedly, kind of a community effort vibe. Right. They host various candlelight vigils and memorials for the girls. So as I mentioned, Lyric's family has some issues, and then because of that, they inevitably fall under some suspicion. Most likely, like I said, because of this background, because they had past criminal charges. Misty, Lyric's mom, had mostly drug and alcohol related charges, and Daniel, her dad, had drug and alcohol charges as well as theft. He also made meth in the house when Lyric was a kid.
So my question, I knew you were going to kind of answer it, so I waited, but my first question was, do any of them have any sort of violent criminal record?
I was just about to say Daniel also assaulted Misty, her mom.
Okay.
Physical, assaults.
Okay.
At the time, which is why she's with her fucking grandma, right?
Right.
So at the time, at least they have the wherewithal to say we shouldn't have this kid right now.
Right.
At the time of the girls' murders, he actually had multiple outstanding cases against him for drug things and assaults.
So this guy's just a giant piece of shit, like just straight out.
Yeah. I mean, also meth is like, will fucking make people violent. It makes people do insane shit. Like
it makes people do, it doesn't necessarily equal violence, but it definitely doesn't not equal violence. It definitely just creates, it's kind of like a gnarlier version of alcohol. Like it'll just kind of
amplify the person you already are.
Exactly.
In a really extreme form. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in 2013, the following year after the murders, Dan was actually sentenced to 90 years in prison.
Whoa.
With a 30-year mandatory minimum. And I'm sure this guy's a piece of shit, but I just want to make a side note that amount of sentencing should not be possible for meth related charges alone.
Agreed.
That is fucking stupid.
That's ridiculous.
That is fucking stupid. I would even say 30 years is stupid for meth.
Yeah,
but
for non-violent, and I understand that meth can be, you could construe that as like violence or whatever. And like if you're like cartel level or something, like that might be different.
I mean, he was clearly making it, so that will get you a lot higher charges, obviously. So than just dealing it casually or
just using it. But still, that's insane.
Yeah, that's stupid. That's stupid. So that's where her dad is. He's not going anywhere. So boop, boop, boop. Just a note about the family. I really don't think they're involved, just for the record. But people, because it just seems like an abduction, which we'll talk more about in depth. But it does not seem like a family member would have followed them on their bike ride. Like I just don't see it. But in the Reddits and stuff, you'll see a lot of people circling back to their family and trying to cast suspicion on little things they've said here and there. And it's like, yeah, I'm sure sometimes maybe Misty, her statements are inconsistent because she's on meth, like.
Yeah, like she's not going to be the most reliable person to speak to.
So you'll still see on the Reddit people kind of picking apart like the family.
I don't know. Having dealt with a lot of meth people, like I can tell you, like whatever they say is not reliable. Just straight up. It's just not.
Exactly.
No.
So a couple months later, on December 5th, 2012, the girls' bodies were found at the Seven Bridges Wildlife Area, which is 25 miles from Evansdale, where they were clearly taken.
Wow. Oh, that's so horrific to think about, like them being transported and so scared. God damn.
Yeah. Authorities, just like in Delphi, have never released their cause of death.
Okay.
Any information about their
I had a big issue with that with Delphi, and I tried to be like, no, I understand why. But now that they caught the guy, I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, it's not for me to decide whether or not the cops should release that, because obviously they thought it was someone local and they wanted to keep them chill by not releasing. And I'm wondering if it's kind of the same thing. And now I feel bad for ever kind of doubting that. I mean, fuck cops, but like still,
Yeah, no, well, that whole thing is insane. I won't too far in a Delphi track, but yeah. So here's just some interesting information. That's the basics of the case, but the FBI and like local law enforcement have put out kind of a profile that's super interesting, and it kind of gives us more details about what they think happened, I think.
Okay.
And this it's a call for information and a description of the killer. They're saying that presumably he was familiar with the area, because this area was not super populated. It was not a common hunting area in the season. It seems like it was remote, where they were at least dumped. I don't know if they think they were killed there or just dumped there.
Okay.
But it's a remote area. So to get there, period, he has to have some familiarity with the area.
Mm-hmm.
They note that he likely has, quote, legal trouble, marital trouble, employment problems, financial problems, or mental health issues, which is a big, open range there.
Yeah.
They said that they would also follow the case closely in the media.
Mm-hmm.
And they may have also tried to abduct kids or adults in the past or since. So this is a repeat offender.
Okay.
And they think that they may have also tried to change their appearance, altered their vehicle, or sold the vehicle, reupholstered their car. So basically they think something happened in the fucking car. Either the girls were transported or attacked there.
So they also are kind of indicating that the girls were maybe killed there?
I don't know.
Because I don't know that. Why else would they reupholster if there's not like blood? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, to me, that indicates that
something happened in the car.
Something bloody happened.
Besides them just being transported. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So the FBI statement also says that the killer likely used, quote unquote, quiet coercion to control the girls and abduct them.
Oh, just like Delphi.
Sounds familiar? Yeah.
Yes. Oh, God.
Exactly like we think happened in Delphi, where he has the gun and he says, guys, down the hill, right? This guy could have easily pulled up, and he also they've been biking for several hours by that point. He easily could have been watching them, right? Or following them, or finding the opportune moment to abduct them, pull up, has a gun, and that's how it happened.
Right.
Just like Delphi.
Dude.
Yeah. So a description is put out of a large, old, kind of boxy white car that they said could have been a Chevy Suburban or a Ford Bronco. And apparently this was seen parked near where the girls' bikes were dumped, like in a very opportune time on the timeline. So that car has been put out there as a possibility as well. Yeah, it's like, again, I wish there was more to this case, but it's unsolved, obviously, and this is pretty much it. But I kind of wanted to like put out some theories of why this is connected to Delphi and like what the fuck happened. Obviously, we already went over how this implies a kind of a quick abduction, in my opinion. Right. The bikes being sort of just dropped, right?
Right.
And they were taken away from the site.
It was like a crime of opportunity, straight up.
Yeah. And because we don't have any information about how their bodies were found or what condition, like, I'm sure this information exists. I just don't think it's been released. We don't know exactly how long they were alive or where they were killed. We just know that their bodies were eventually dumped.
Yeah. There. I mean, it sounds to me like it was the same day thing if they're assuming that the car played a decent sized role. And my assumption about them thinking something happened in the car is probably because there wasn't a lot of blood at the scene. Meaning they already stopped bleeding by the time they were dumped. And they might have used like how long did they think they've been dead to say it was probably the same day. You know what I mean? Like, it sounds to me.
Yeah. And Myers Lake, where they were abducted from, is very close to the 380 freeway. So people also think that they could have gone in and out of town quite quickly, right? And just like jumped on the freeway. So people, like I said, have continued to be suspicious of Lyric's dad. He continues to deny this possibility. I already said this, but I don't think it's a thing.
Right.
Just really other obvious things with Delphi. They're two really close female friends or,
right.
children. I think there's also the fact that they're 8, 9, 10, and 11.
Mm-hmm. Well, they were 13, 14, Delphi. Abby was 13, Libby was 14, I think.
Why did I just read something like that? Anyway,
but
their
were
ages
young.
were all in order or something.
Similar,
I forget. Anyway, and also this is just probably nothing, but it is eerie, so I have to mention it. The dates are an exact anagram of each other and 5 years apart. So it's July 13th, 2012, and then Delphi is February 13th, 2017. So the dates are flipped.
Whoa.
Yeah. Both areas where they are found are kind of hunters areas, a very similar type of, like, to me, that's one of the eeriest parts of this. The whole thing is, it's like two girls, best friends, on an outing by themselves in the day, clearly stalked and targeted, abducted using quiet coercion, murdered, and this guy is clearly very comfortable in like wilderness hunting, like that mode in those spaces, and he knows different like wildlife areas, in this area. So it's quite similar. And the way they talk about that reminds me of Delphi too, where they're like, oh, this has to be a local, this has to be someone who's familiar with this wildlife area, and he fucking is. So clearly,
right. Well,
officially,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, officially, the Indiana State Police who manage Delphi case say that they have said that they aren't related. But I've also seen like, okay, well, we're not ruling it out, or we'll look into it. So the case, I do have the updated reward amount. Good. This case is still unsolved. Like I said, it's very much actively investigated still, and it has $150,000 reward.
Wow, $150,000.
Yeah, this past July was the 10-year anniversary of the girl's abduction, and there was press about it to kind of commemorate that. And there was a kind of renewed call for tips and information. Like I said, it's still a very active investigation.
So what I was going to say was incorrect because I had the city wrong. But, I mean, it's not super far. I don't know, man. Like,
I mean, here's the thing. Like, I think it's hard because, number one, whoever did Delphi, now that is extra, like, we think it's this guy, but theoretically Richard Allen, like, could, if our Delphi guy could, I firmly believe, is a repeat offender. Like, I firmly believe Delphi was not a one-time thing. And also in both cases, this is a very bold, broad daylight abduction and murder, potentially, or at least abduction in the case of Evansdale. Like, it's very bold, and there was easily could have been witnesses. And now we know that because the probable cause thing was unsealed with Delphi, now we know that people saw him literally walking away bloody. Like, that is so fucking bold.
It's very bold. But so you do think that wasn't the first time?
Oh no, I absolutely think he was a repeat offender, and it was not the first time he did that. Period. Like, I absolutely think that. If this is related, I don't know. But people also have cast even a wider net. I don't have time to go into every case, maybe for a Patreon, but like people have even cast a wider net on some like blogs and podcasts and looked at like basically the whole Midwest, like all these different states, all the times a girl has disappeared or been murdered of the same kind of age range, or where there was a pair, right? So like I think you can it depends how far geographically out you want to go. There are similar cases, and I do think some of them are going to come up connected to fucking this guy. And I don't know if it's this one, but it is eerily similar.
I mean, any ones that they have DNA on, they'll be able to tie to him, obviously, at this point. So it's just like a waiting game to see what they come up with. I feel like after March, when he goes to trial, we'll have more. We'll have more information.
I mean, this is eerily similar, though, either way.
It really is.
Creepy.
And it's, according to the maps, it's like a 6-hour drive. Which like feels weird for that, because like in California, if it's like 400 miles, it's like 4 or 5 hours if you drive like me, I guess. So maybe they're just thinking for people who drive the legal speed limit. But it seems like it's through fairly open land. It's so crazy how all these states are so close to each other. Like, you drive through Illinois to get to Iowa from Indiana. Like, it's fucking bizarre how that
I was, up late Googling, like, does Richard Allen have family in Iowa or something? I'm sure if he has an obvious Iowa connection, people would have pinged that by now.
Right. Agreed.
Agreed. Not that I found. Lastly, I was just going to mention that the girl's family has set up the park, I think Myers Park, where they were last seen biking, as quote quote unquote Angels Park.
Aww.
And they have big like gazebos and memorials that they maintain fastidiously for the girls and then other local missing and murdered girls. So
that makes me really fucking sad that
it's very sad though. Yeah.
I feel really bad for their families. I really hope that they get closure. They figure out who the fuck did this. Cause that's the type of thing that I just feel like you should be able to figure that out. You know what I mean? Like it's ridiculous. God damn.
Yeah, and it's been cold longer than Delphi was, 10 years. So
that's insane. I mean, I feel really impatient about Delphi and they cracked it. I can't imagine how people that are really in with this case, like pay attention to it must feel. And now I feel like a dick for like not knowing more about it. So I have to look it up.
There you go.
Damn. Okay, well, that was depressing. I'm going to take us on a trip that's also depressing, but a little bit lighter. Can murder be light? You know what I'm saying. It doesn't involve children, so that's good. It is pretty brutal, though, actually. So anyway, where I'm going to talk about the case of Carol Giles and Tim Collier.
I know nothing about this, so I'm excited.
Oh, good. This took place in 1997 in West Bloomfield, which is really near Pontiac, Michigan. So we're actually kind of near there because we're not far from where you were. Like it's a day's drive. Okay. So we're keeping it in the northern Midwest, it seems. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start by talking about Jesse Giles Jr. He is a man in his early mid 40s. He's divorced. He has 2 kids who he loves and cares for. He actually has 4 at the time this story takes place, but I'm going back a little bit. He was a family man and a wonderful father. Despite having been divorced, he was like a really good provider. His kids were super tight with him. I feel like whatever happened in the divorce, it remained like amicable. He owned a successful cleaning company. So he had a lot of money because he was self-employed and he was just like he was a really solid guy, right? Yeah. Good father, good provider, just on the right track, right? He was also a super jovial dude. He loved to throw parties. He was always like with a smile for everyone. And like I said, he didn't just like to attend parties, but he liked to host. So he liked to have people in his home. He liked to be welcoming, to make people feel like family. He just sounds like a rad dude. Like
that's my favorite thing. I love hosting.
I know you really do.
I do.
Yeah, it's really nice. You love feeding people too, which is like,
and you like to eat, so it's perfect.
I know. Of all the things I love about you, that's definitely up there. It's one of the more like self-serving things. But...
Cindy, do you want to come eat food I made? And you're like,
yeah, fuck yeah, just say when. So he, like I said, he liked to throw these parties, and at one of these parties, he met a classmate of one of his children, a woman named Carol Fortune. And let me just stop right there because I know you're like, whoa, classmate of his child. And you already probably feel where this is going.
Okay.
So let me just say that he was 16 when he had his first child.
Okay.
And by the time he met Carol, I think he was like in his late 30s, possibly 40, and she was in her early to mid 20s.
Okay.
So it's not that scandalous. Like it's really not. They're both adults, right?
Yeah. No, my husband is 13 years older than me. So
right. So add 3 more years. There you go. It's I know we've talked about this before, but I feel like it's a case by case basis, right?
Yeah, for sure. And also when you're both like adults, it kind of like everyone's who cares?
Right. It's not like she's 17 or 16 or
exactly,
something, and he's like, 32 or whatever. He was an adult, she was an adult, she was into her 20s, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, they meet, they hit it off, they get along really, really well, and they end up dating. Then they get married and they have 2 kids together. Meanwhile, Jesse is also at this time a grandfather because one of his daughter, his oldest daughter, also had kids kind of young. And, he loves those kids as much as he loves his own. So loving provider, total family man, super stable guy. Now, Jesse was always a bigger man and he had some health issues kind of due to this. He was around 400 or so pounds around the time this story takes place. And I want to kind of stop there because some of the articles that I read, the headlines were like 500-pound invalid. And it's like, listen, that's not fucking cool. Like, how about married father of 4? Like,
right.
loving provider to his family.
Oof.
It was so it really, really bothered me. So I just wanted to call out how shitty that is.
Because it's also kind of ableist too. It's sort of like really making it sound negative that even if he is an invalid, that Like, if I don't know what that means, but like
they're blaming his weight, and they're blaming
it's sort of making it sound like a strike against him. It's like, no.
Exactly. They're like shaming him. And I think if you were to call that out, they'd be like, well, we're trying to make people feel bad for him because he's an invalid and like whatever. But it's like, no, you're just being shitty and ableist and fuck you. But anyway, it is something that I have to talk about. So he was a hardworking man, despite whatever his size was. He was able-bodied. One time his daughter said he fell off a roof and broke his ankle. So, he's not fucking around. Like, he's doing his job. No. He's getting up doing the things he needs to do. But he does suffer some injuries over time, and I think those slowed him down a bit.
Right.
So there's, it affects his ability to work. It affects his mobility. And also, due to his size, he did suffer from diabetes. And in 1996, towards the end of the year, I do believe he suffered a stroke.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Yeah, and this caused him to lose all feeling in his left arm. So he mostly recovered, but he slowed way down. He can't work. He's got a disability at this point. And Carol, who happens to be a nurse and who works at the local hospital, is luckily very able to care for him. So she can start taking care of him, which is great. His wife has a built-in skill that is great for the situation. Unfortunately, Carol was originally from a pretty gnarly background. Neither of her biological parents raised her. She was actually raised by her stepdad. Okay. So it was not, and that she came to that point through like real bad situations, right?
Right. Yeah. Not an easy journey.
No. So she comes from a place of like instability, and I think the reason she was drawn to Jesse to begin with is the stability that he represented. He's got this great family. He's like the center. He's like the patriarch of this beautiful, happy, stable family, right? And so she craved that. But when things got tough, Carol ran away. She didn't know how to handle having a sick husband, and she didn't quite act the way that you would hope she did. So she starts having an affair. And at first, the family doesn't know this, but she starts to change. And his children, who have known her since, high school or whatever, they start to kind of notice something that's going on. And so things start to get tenuous between his children and her, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know the exact timeline for how long they were together, but long enough to have two, like, young kids, right?
Okay.
So Jesse at one point actually confronts her about the affair. And he's like, I know you're having an affair. You need to go. Like, we're breaking up. I'm going to divorce you. You can't be acting like this. And she's like, I'm so sorry. I'll stop. Like, I'll change. I want to be with you. And he accepts her. He allows her to stay. And he's like, okay, we can try to work this out, but I want you to know that I know. And this stops now. Right?
Yeah.
So then in September 1997, Jesse Giles unfortunately dies of a heart attack while at home. And this is very shortly after he told Carol that she needed to move out.
Okay.
His daughter, Tamikia, chokes up years later, still talking about when he died, which to me is like a big sign of like the love she has for him and the bond that they had.
Yeah.
She just remembers, her family calling her over to one of their homes and how she's just in shock. And she's like, I spoke to my dad 2 hours prior on the phone. The doctor said he died of a heart attack, and I don't believe it. Like, I think, something bad happened to him. And in fact, the day that her father died, she went to the hospital and confronted Carol and asked her, like, what did you do to my father? And Carol's like, I didn't fucking do anything. Like, why are you attacking me? And I guess Tamikia's grandmother had to like break it up because it became like kind of a big deal, which obviously, she's upset. I get it. Tamikia actually called the police and pled with them, please look into this. Like, look into my father's death. But with the medical examiner's ruling, they were just like, it's a heart attack. Like, he's 500 pounds. He had a stroke. Like, he had heart issues in the past. Like, there's no reason that we would expect this is anything other than a heart attack. And like, I have to say, like, that's not unreasonable, right? Like, he's in failing health. He's got diabetes. Like, it tracks, right? So Carol's acting upset, but the family's calling bullshit. So now there's a lot more tension, obviously, between them. And one reason they call bullshit is because they knew about the affair. So that's part one.
Okay.
Okay. He's dead. The family hates her.
Maybe a little interlude, commercial break or something.
Yeah. Stay tuned, guys. Okay. Now, part 2 takes place directly after Jesse's death. Carol is now living alone with her 2 kids, and she needs help, so she asks her friend Nancy Billiter to move in with her. Nancy was a 45-year-old woman who was studying to be a nurse and was working at a local restaurant so she could put herself through school. So I don't know what her career path or what she had done prior to this, but at 45, she decided she wanted to be a nurse. So she started working, started going to school. She was working her ass off to make this happen. She and Carol met and became friends because Carol would come into the restaurant and read mystery novels. And I guess they both liked mystery novels, so they started talking. Found out Carol was already a nurse, so obviously that is like something they have in common. So they became friends. So Nancy moves in and agrees she will help the kids because they're still quite young, and Carol's all alone and her husband literally just died. So the kids immediately love Nancy. She's a really good, really stable presence in their lives, right? And she moved in like 2 weeks after Jesse died, so very, very quickly. And about 2 weeks after that, wouldn't you know, but Tim Collier, the man Carol wasn't still having an affair with, suddenly moved in as Carol's new boyfriend.
Oh, that was quick. Yeah.
Okay. Very quick. Okay. And shortly after moving in, Tim was wearing Jesse's jewelry, driving his truck, just filled in the gap, just slid right on in there, right?
Oh, God. Okay.
And Carol started to act differently. She started to change. She started to just basically expect Nancy to raise her kids while she did whatever the fuck she wanted. As you can imagine, this really upset Jesse's older kids and family. There wasn't a lot that they could do. Not only was the family unhappy, but Nancy was unhappy because Tim Collier was a fucking creepy piece of shit. And he would apparently pretty regularly suggest to Carol and Nancy that they have a threesome. And that if Nancy was going to live there, she should service his needs.
Oh, God. Okay. So he's a real winner. He's a real cool guy. Yeah.
Real good guy. And also Tim worked at the hospital also. So Nancy's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, I'm here to care for these kids. And even though she definitely wanted to move out, I think she knew that she couldn't. She had to stay there and care for those kids because Carol was clearly unstable and didn't give a fuck. And this guy is a giant piece of shit. So she's staying put, even though she's not like super stoked. So in November of 1997, Carol and Tim went out to California, leaving Nancy, to care for the kids. Ugh. And because that's where Tim was originally from. So he wanted Carol to meet his family. While they were away, Nancy called and said that somebody had broken into the house while she was at work and stole the VCR. Now, I don't know that much about Nancy, so I can't speak to the validity of Tim's suspicion, but I can say that he suspected her, and what happens next is way over the top for a fucking VCR.
Okay.
So Carol and Tim cut their California trip short and come back, right? Mm-hmm. And I mean, this is 1997, so a VCR may have been like a couple $100, which is kind of funny when you think about it, because like most people, I'm sure there's people listening right now who are like, what is that? What is it? So for those of you who don't know, a VCR is a thing that used to play videos.
Like it's a thing you have in your garage with dust on it and trash.
Possibly. I mean, at this point, I feel like some of these people's parents might be too young. No, not really. But yeah. Anyway, it played movies, like taped movies, which is just hilarious to think about. But in any case, so they come back.
That you have to say that.
I know, they have to like explain. I didn't even explain it well because honestly, who gives a shit? It's just a fucking piece of machinery that's completely obsolete. Yeah. So they come back around November 12th, and this is the last time Nancy's seen alive. A few days later, on November 14th, her battered body is found in a creek wrapped in a blanket. A fisherman had seen her foot sticking up out of the water, which is fucking horrifying. So her body was pulled from the water and found to be wrapped in a floral blanket or comforter kind of thing. She was horribly beaten and covered in blood. And there were these big round wounds on her chest that looked like burn marks. And she also smelled like gasoline because they had poured gasoline all over the blanket in a failed attempt to light her on fire.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Ugh. I think when that didn't work, she just got dumped in the water.
Okay.
She was wearing a shirt from the restaurant where she worked at the South Boulevard station. So police contacted the owner there, and he identified the body as Nancy. They also told police that she had been living with Carol Giles and maybe go talk to Carol. So police go to talk to Carol, and she at first denies having seen her before her death. But when they say, we know when you came back, we know that you had seen her. I don't know how they knew that, but they did, or maybe they were just bullshitting, you know?
Yeah.
Changes her story and pulls the most classic criminal move. She 1000% turns on Tim immediately.
Classic. Yeah.
And blames him for everything. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Thick as thieves, right? So
no, it's a killer couple classic.
Yes, it really is.
Yeah.
So she recounts how he suspected Nancy of the theft, says that she was working and she came home and found, first she says, Tim and Nancy having an argument. But then she's like, well, Nancy was tied up on the bed and Tim was beating her. And it's like, girl, how is that an argument?
Yeah.
That's not an argument.
An assault. Yeah.
That's like kidnapping and like very scary.
She was just really mad about how she was bound and kidnapped. She was like pretty pissed about it.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck? So she said she went back upstairs. And when Tim came up later, she knew that Nancy was dead. She also said she didn't report it to the cops because she was afraid Tim would kill her next. And she said that he forced her to clean the basement and help him dump the body in the river.
Okay.
So police bring Tim in and they tell him what Carol said. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'll wait to hear her say that at trial. Because this guy, again, kind of aligning with what I said about him before, he thinks he's like, you know, quote unquote, God's gift. Like, of course, Nancy wants to have sex with him. There's no way Carol's going to fucking turn on him. Right. So he's got all this bravado. And a week or so later, he finds out that he's in jail. But Carol's not. And he's like, holy fuck, she did turn on me. So he reaches out to the cops and he's like, all right, let me tell you everything. So first, he tells them that Carol was definitely a willing participant in Nancy's murder. He said she helped tie her up. And those burn marks on her skin were actually Carol injecting Nancy with bleach and battery acid under her skin.
I did not see battery acid coming.
Yes, bleach and battery acid.
Under her skin?
Yep,
How
using
that?
Using the hypodermic needles left over from Jesse's insulin. Because Carol's a nurse, she knows how to do that shit. She knows how to give like subcutaneous shots. Like,
she's really torturing her.
Fucking torturing her.
Wow.
Yep. And
just
then
for being like her babysitter for a VCR?
Yeah, right?
What?
And then Tim pulls out this fun little bombshell. Not only was the reason they killed Nancy not the VCR, but it's because Carol was paranoid that Nancy overheard Carol and Tim talking on the phone about the fact that Carol also murdered Jesse.
There it is.
There it is. In the true crime world, we call this a twofer. Police are like, wait, what? And Tim's like, yeah, Carol became tired of caring for Jesse. She just wanted him out of the picture, but she didn't want to get divorced because then she'd lose the house. She couldn't support herself, yada, yada.
Yeah.
So she asked Tim, hypothetically, how a woman could kill her husband without getting caught. Tim's like, girl, you're not fooling anybody. Put heroin in his insulin. Let me get that for you.
Oh.
So he procured some heroin for her and she injected a lethal dose into Jesse with some of his insulin.
And that showed up as a heart attack? How'd that happen?
Well, when you don't give a shit and it seems like all signs point to something, you know.
Also a little bit of ableism or fat phobia peppering in here of like, well, don't look too much into it.
100%.
Yeah.
But Tamikia was right. Daughter's intuition. So they bring Carol back in and she folds. She admits to everything and they arrest her. So both Tim and Carol are tried for both murders and they're tried together, but with separate juries, which I didn't realize is a thing.
Yeah. That happened just recently with Paul Flores and his dad.
So they were tried together, but with separate juries.
With separate juries,
I didn't realize that they were actually like tried together. I thought they were kind of like tried separately.
I think it was together, but with separate juries.
That's so crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. But it doesn't matter because both juries find them guilty of both murders. They're each sentenced to 2 life sentences without parole. They both appeal, and I actually read the appeals, and it's so pathetic what they're trying to like of their appeal.
Yeah.
There is nothing. They don't have a leg to stand on, but like, you know, I think their defense attorneys are like doing their jobs, but it was like really sad. She's like, she was appealing because one of the pictures they showed, like they shouldn't have showed it, even though it was like the murder victim. And it's like, why exactly shouldn't they show the murder victim in a murder trial? Like, what?
Right.
What are you talking about?
They're just reaching for whatever they can really grab onto. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jesse's family is super happy they got justice for their father, but you know, they're still deeply affected by his murder, even 15 years later. You know, they did some like investigation discovery interviews and things, and it's just really, really sad because he was like a really good guy. Like Like I've never really read a story about a dad that was like this loved, and like this stable. It's like he's like the textbook definition of like a stable guy, and it was just really fucked up. And then poor Nancy, another stable person, just doing them favors who they fucking brutally torture.
Just came across these random, and why torture her? Like too, like that just seems like such extra like hatred for some reason.
Yeah, there's something very fucking sick going on with these two. Like
these two innocent people just came across these fucked up fucking assholes.
Yeah, total fucking losers. So
battery acid, wow.
Battery acid and bleach. Oof. It's like neither one of those is like fun,
No, but together.
Yeah. So this was in, the 90s and they're still rotting in prison and,
Yeah.
Too bad, so sad.
Oof.
All right. There's our
Midwest part 1.
Yep. Man, I'm excited for my next case. I can't wait to record it. So, and I know you said you're excited
that
for
you're
it
doing
too.
It. Yes.
Should be a good one. Anyway, all right. Anything else to talk? Oh, we didn't say to follow us on Patreon. We we didn't release a Patreon last month. Sorry, guys. Between being sick and travel and everything, like
too much illness. Yeah.
Yeah, I owe you guys one. I have a couple. I actually told one of our listeners that I would cover one that she sent, so I'm going to research that. Okay. Hopefully, we'll get that up in the next couple weeks. Yeah,
sounds good.
Thanks for supporting us, guys. Even though we're like, although I have to say, when I was looking at our Spotify thing, we release more content than 99% of true crime podcasts.
Hey, yeah, good bang for your freeness.
Yeah, we're fucking killing the game, guys. But thanks to our patrons, you're the wind beneath our wings, and we love you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you'd like to join us, there you can, or Instagram. Let's not do all that. I'm too tired. Do you want to do it?
A nap. Cindy needs a nap. We'll do it next time.
You know where to find us. It's in the show notes. We love you. All right. Everybody have a healthier week than I'm going to, and until next time,
stay
off our